I've spent 30 years of my life fixing things. In this small, sun-drenched workshop, no crack is too wide, no fragment is too small. My hands are a map of scars, each one earned from a battle with oak, mahogany, or pine. I pride myself on being a master fixer. People bring me heirlooms that look like firewood, and I return them as masterpieces. I know the language of wood. I know when it's thirsty, when it's stressed, and when it just needs time to settle. But there's a painful truth I kept hidden behind the smell of sawdust and varnish. I could restore a priceless antique table found in a wreck, but I was completely powerless against the breakdown inside my own home. I couldn't connect with Maya, my only daughter. We lived under the same roof, shared the same meals, but we existed in two different galaxies. The more I tried to build a bridge to her, the further away she seemed to drift. I remember one Tuesday evening, Maya came home, her shoulders slumped, her eyes red from holding back tears. I could feel her pain vibrating through the kitchen. As a fixer, my brain immediately went into overdrive. I didn't ask her how she felt. I asked her what the problem was so I could solve it. Is it your grades? Is it your friends? Here's what you need to do, Maya. I gave her a 5-point plan. I quoted philosophies. I talked about how I handled stress when I was her age. I thought I was being a hero. I thought I was being a father. But Maya didn't want a hero. She looked at me with a mixture of anger and exhaustion, then simply stood up and walked away. The sound of her bedroom door closing wasn't loud, but to me, it sounded like a canyon collapsing. I stood there in the kitchen, holding my perfect solutions in my hands like useless scraps of wood. I was trying to fix a heart with a hammer and nails. My wife, Sarah, was watching from the shadows. She is the quiet strength of our family, the glue that keeps us together. That night, she sat me down in the workshop. The air was thick with the scent of cedar. She didn't scold me. She just looked at my hands, my talented, scarred hands, and asked a question that cut deeper than any chisel. Mark, when you were talking to Maya tonight, where was your mind living at that moment? I tried to argue. I was right there. I was helping her. But Sarah shook her head slowly. No, you were in the future, trying to prevent a problem. You were in the past, comparing her to yourself, but you weren't with her. She told me that most people fail at connection because they listen to respond, not to understand. They prepare their next sentence while the other person is still bleeding their heart out. The problem isn't your words, Mark. The problem is your attention. The next day, I didn't go to the workshop. I waited for Maya to come home. When I heard her footsteps, my heart raced. I was terrified. As a man who always had an answer, having no answer felt like jumping into the dark. I knocked on her door. Maya, can I just sit with you for a bit? I promise I won't say a word. She looked surprised, skeptical, but she let me in. I sat on the old wooden chair in the corner of her room. For the first 10 minutes, the silence was agonizing. My brain was screaming at me to fix the atmosphere. I wanted to apologize, to explain, to give more advice. But I remembered Sarah's words. I closed my eyes for a second and focused on my breath. I decided that my only goal, my only mission, was to be fully present, to learn one true thing about Maya's heart. Slowly, the tension in the room began to shift. Maya was sitting on her bed, picking at a loose thread on her blanket. Usually, I would tell her to stop ruining the blanket. This time, I just watched the movement of her fingers. I saw the tremor in her hand. Finally, she spoke. It was a whisper at first. I feel like I'm failing at everything, Dad. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. My instinct yelled, tell her she's great, tell her she's a winner. But I stayed quiet. I just nodded and kept my eyes on her, letting her see that I was truly listening. I invited the silence to stay. And because the silence was safe, more words came out. She talked about the social media pressure, the fear of the future, the feeling that she was invisible even when she was in a crowded room. She talked for 40 minutes. I didn't give a single solution. I just held the space for her. When she finally finished, there was a peace in the room I hadn't felt in years. Maya looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, her eyes weren't guarded. They were bright. She crawled across the bed and leaned her head on my shoulder. She didn't say thank you, but she didn't have to. The way she exhaled told me everything. I realized that a good silence between two people is better than 100 empty words. I used to think my power came from my hands and my tools, but that evening I learned that real power comes from the courage to stop talking. The person who truly listens becomes the most powerful speaker in the room because they speak through their presence. I realized that Maya wasn't a project to be fixed. She was a soul to be heard. Most of the vessels in our lives aren't broken. They are just empty, waiting for someone to pour their attention into them. This isn't just a story about a father and a daughter. This is a story about every single person who has ever felt invisible. We live in a world that is shouting, screaming, and performing. Everyone wants to be heard, but so few are willing to hear. Real connection is a choice you make every single day. It's the choice to put down your phone, to silence your ego, and to give someone your full heart. The world doesn't need more voices. It desperately needs more ears. If you've been trying to fix someone you love, try stopping, try listening. Try being a bridge of silence instead of a wall of words. You might find that the thing you've been looking for was right there all along, just waiting to be noticed. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the greatest repair you can ever make is the one that happens when you stop talking and start genuinely caring.